Well, hello, everyone. This is Ken Hardison, and welcome to another episode of Grow Your Law Firm. And today we have Kyle Hebenstreit with Practice Made Perfect. Welcome to our show today.
Thanks for having me, Ken. Happy to be
Yeah.
here.
And I like that tagline, clients matter, ideas matter, results matter, you matter. I like that.
Yeah, these are our core values as a company. I, along with the leadership team at PMP, defined these a little while ago, and they show up in different places here and there, but they kind of guide us on how we approach work and sort of tough
Yeah.
decisions. And they also help kind of bind us as a team.
Well, yeah. So for our viewers or our listeners out there, I met Kyle at the Mass Torch Made Perfect, not Practice Made Perfect, but Mass Torch Made Perfect out in Vegas, I guess 2 or 3 weeks ago,
Hmm.
and got to talking. And I said, I'd really like to have you on my show because you informed me of something that I didn't even know, and I usually know what's going on in the industry, but for some reason, I don't know. I just didn't know it. And for anybody out there that knows Practice Made Perfect, used to be the deal of John Morgan, but he sold out, right?
That's true. That's true. Yeah, PMP is what we typically refer to ourselves as, but it does stand for Practice Made Perfect. It was started by John Morgan a little over 20 years ago,
Yeah.
and evolved over many years. And I, along with some partners of mine, acquired PMP from John almost 2 years ago now, and have been investing to sort of see its next phase of growth and get it ready for the future of advertising in the personal injury space.
Well, I think it was a smart move on his part because he's going to everybody's market. So now you bought something that you got to fight him with because he's going in everybody's market, and
Yeah,
doing a lot of cash.
yeah, yeah.
But I tell people, listen, Walmart, Walmart went in all these small towns and it hurt a lot of people, but a lot of people still did very well. I mean, you just gotta, what you gotta know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, you got to get somebody like you to help them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I totally agree with that sentiment. And yes, yeah, I mean you're totally right. So John was growing into new markets, and I think that caused some friction within the client base at PMP for a couple of years. And now I mean we do face the competition of Morgan and Morgan in a couple of our client markets, and it is definitely a factor. But to your point, there's a lot of opportunity to go around for law firm managing partners and owners who are really smart about their operations and know what they want to get out of their practice in the near
Yeah.
term and the long term. And so we try to advise holistically
Yeah.
on that in any market. But yeah, it's important to have a
Yeah.
smart strategy when you're going up against a well capitalized competitor like Morgan and Morgan.
So I even think it can help. I think he can help because he puts up more awareness about
Mm-hmm.
that you can get a lawyer for free, and all this
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff. I mean, so I think it can
Absolutely.
help you. Uh,
Absolutely. I think there's, and we do market polls a lot where we're pulling sort of normal people in various markets to understand like what type of messaging is resonating. And over again, the no fee unless you win, the contingency fee model is something that people don't know about. And so continuing to hit on that messaging is important. And yeah, I think the types of almost educating the audience that Morgan does and other law firm marketers as well do only advances sort of the interests of our clients and further educating the audiences in their local market.
well, we know the story of PNP, but let's hear the story about you, Kyle.
Sure.
Tell me your
Yeah.
journey to get to this place.
Yeah, sure. So I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana originally. A love of movies took me out to Los Angeles. I studied film and business at USC. I worked at the William Morris Talent Agency, but spent the lion's share of my time in Los Angeles working at a film co-financing and production company called Skydance Media. They do movies like Mission Impossible and Top Gun Maverick and things of that nature. But there were 10 of us at that time when I started, and I started in a creative capacity, worked there for a couple years, doing script development and things of that nature. I fell in love with the business side of the company because a lot of interesting stuff was going on in media with YouTube and Hulu and Netflix. I worked as a chief of staff for the CEO and thought I want to do things sort of more like what he's doing with my career than specifically stay in creative. So I went to business school, and then I became a management consultant at Deloitte Consulting based out of Chicago, where I advise media companies and other large technology companies on their advertising strategies, doing a lot of M&A work and growth strategy work for, AT&T and Time Warner and Meredith, a big magazine company, and companies like that on how to think about the evolving landscape. And from there, I partnered with a private equity firm in Chicago that's sole strategy is to invest and partner folks like me who are operating experience to look for and find a small to medium-sized business to acquire and then operate and grow. And it's called Next Gen Growth Partners. And the overlying thesis is that there are a lot of baby boomer business owners out there who don't have children they're going to leave their business to and no succession plan. We offer a liquidity event and a plan to preserve the legacy of the business and the team in place and hopefully grow that into the future. And so I identified PMP. I'd been looking in the legal space. My mom's a bankruptcy judge. My dad's an attorney. My sister's a former prosecutor. So I felt like I knew the client base, and I thought that the skills and experience I'd accumulated would be really useful to a wide variety of law firms out there. And I found PMP as a really great business and a great place. And I thought that there was a lot that we could do to invest in and grow it. And so far, I'm living that vision now and will be for many years to come. So
where you living at now? In Florida?
West Palm Beach. So PMP is based in West Palm Beach. And for those listeners who may not know, PMP is a marketing firm that caters to law firms, most specifically personal injury law firms. And we have a web services group, and we've got an advertising services group. And our web services group effectively builds and manages websites, social media profiles, Google business profiles for law firms. And we improve the searchability of law firms. And we try to ensure that when people find our clients online and research them, that they end up hiring them. And then on the advertising services side of the house, we build our clients' brands, and we manage their advertising investments across platforms, ultimately to grow their reach and their brand awareness, and then influence the user journey to hopefully drive more cases for them. So our mission, as we call it, is kind of like, we help law firms to get more cases, help more people, and grow their firms.
Yeah. It's like you're just a full-term ad agency that does it all, really.
We're full service, and we have the experience and capabilities in-house to meet a law firm anywhere in their life cycle. If you've just broken off from a firm and you're starting your own shop, it's like we can help you out with a website and some SEO and some social media, and we can do that. Or we have clients who have been market leaders in their respective markets for many years, who've got very sophisticated operations, have huge benefits of scale, and well-established brands in their local market. And so we're set up to cater to a law firm at any point in their life cycle.
So it's just wherever they're at that point. Because I know some agencies, I was talking to one guy, he just will not touch any lawyer unless he's spending $150,000 a month. We certainly have clients that fit that type of investment level, but that is not us. I think that's smart, because that guy that's spending 150 today was not spending 150 10 years ago. Exactly. I can promise you that.
I totally agree.
Everybody starts somewhere. We got a Pillman mastermind member, and he's doing over 10 million in revenues. And when he joined Pillman, he was doing 300,000. Yeah. And he said, I don't belong in a mastermind. I said, how do you, he said, I'm not big. I said, how do you think all these other guys started out? So you think they all just jumped in and started doing 10 million or 5 million? No, it takes work. It takes building,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a good message. And so we think about it as like kind of like 3 phases of kind of law firm maturity. With the plant phase is like, I need a website and some incremental growth. The grow phase is like, I'm going to be very deliberate about reinvesting what I earn in my business back into the business for marketing to grow that business. And that takes many years to get that traction. And then we talk about the harvest phase, where I've built kind of a competitive moat. My brand has been established in my market. I've got a robust intake. I can project out how many cases I'm going to get a year. And you only get to that point if you're really muscling it out and being disciplined for many, many years. It's, we come across this where folks just want us to do, hey, will you do like a paid social media campaign for us? And we could do that, but we don't want to be order takers, because what's going to happen is you're not going to be successful because you're not going to stick with it. You're going to measure it on a short-term basis, and you're going to be disappointed with the results, because that's not what that media vehicle is intended to produce. And so we really try to advise up front. It's like, we can be an order taker, but we'd rather be accountable and think about what are your business objectives, and then how can we provide the support and services necessary to get there. But to your point, it takes long-term commitment. The guy spending $10 million a year didn't get there overnight.
Yeah, and there's no one silver bullet. I mean, the deal is it takes a lot of different things. I remember when somebody said, well, how many things you do? And I actually counted them up. I was doing 32 different things to market my law firm. And some of them was costing me nothing. And some of them were costing me, hundreds of $1,000s a year, But the deal was, I couldn't, it all worked together, the synergy to try to create that brand, and try to, market to people that didn't know us, market to our past clients, market to our present clients, market to third party, doctors, lawyers, the whole deal. I mean, it's just so much involved. If you really want to try to take it to the next level, you can't just say, well, I'll just throw some money in on TV and that's it. I mean, I think
totally.
People,
totally. I would say that, like, if you don't want to be a $10 million a year firm too, that's totally fine. I think that we've clients we have, and plenty of lawyers I've spoken to who've they've got nice word of mouth, organic sort of referral networks, doctors or, otherwise. And they just want to augment it with a, professionalized digital presence. Maybe they spend some money on some SEO or paid social media or paid search, and and the machine hums and produces the lifestyle and type of relationship to their law firm that they want. And that is totally fine. You don't need to try to be a John Morgan in order to have a good, fulfilling career as an attorney in this space. And so, I think we try to cater to that. And that's why we try to anchor on the business objectives. What do you want out of your law firm?
Yeah.
And then let's go from there.
Yeah. One of my mentors, Bern Harnish, he wrote the book Scaling Up.
Yep.
And he said, revenue is for your ego. He said, profit is for your sanity. He said, but really cash flow is king or queen, because if you don't, once you run out of cash, it's over with, game over. And I'll never forget that. It's been 3 or 4 years ago. That kind of stuck with me because, and I see this all the time. I see, it depends on what mode of growth they're in. If they're in really heavy growth, growing 50, 100% a year, their profits might even be negative. I mean, it might be a 5% or a 5% negative, but they know it's coming because they've got the cases in house, but they got to turn them over, and that's the big deal about PI law is it takes time to turn cases if you do it right. So I've seen that. So cash, you can grow too fast. Where you can't. So you have to be careful about that too.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you actually raised this, because I think we lose sight of this, because the rumor mill is so-and-so got so many cases, and then people do rough math, and that's how much revenue so-and-so is getting. And it's like, well, how's he getting that? And it's like, well, you don't know what the bottom line looks like.
That's
you
right.
mentioned Walmart earlier, or even Amazon. The strategy there was empire building, and you're not generating a lot of profit. You're building discipline. You're not taking home each year the same amount of cash that some people have grown accustomed to. You're taking that cash and you're reinvesting it in the business for growth, because you have a long-term strategy that scalability is going to be a competitive advantage for you. And that's a conscious decision. And I think it's difficult too for lawyers in particular, because managing partners, it's the cash you're bringing home at the end of the day. It's easy for a for-hire operator to think a different way, because they're drawing a salary and maybe a bonus. But for someone who is seeing every dollar spent in marketing or intake or a business consultant or whatever is money that's not going home to their kids or that vacation that they want, it requires a little bit more discipline and objectivity to make that decision, which can be hard for folks because it's much more personal.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, And listen, I remember in my growth years, like I went from 500,000 to 8 million in like 5, 6 years. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was tremendous growth. I mean, I almost grew too fast.
Mm-hmm.
I took enough out to pay my bills, personal bills, and I put it all back in. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, every bit of it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, it paid off. I could see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it was kind of, you look at yourself sometimes, you get up after about 2 or 3 years, you say, well, I'm killing myself, and I'm, making less than I was making before I started my own law firm.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you got the perseverance, it pays off. I mean, that's the big deal. And if you're doing it right and everything,
Mm-hmm.
you know what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing, got somebody that knows what they're doing with you. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that's another thing we could talk about all day, getting really good people around you. But
Totally.
I want to talk to you about, uh, I keep hearing that, TV is still good, but it's the cost per case is going up, not just in one state, but in every state. I'm hearing this from all over the country that, it still it makes the phone ring, but the cost per acquisition is rising. And my question to you is, you know, I guess, and I'll ask you why you think it's that way. I mean, I think it's a lot of people cutting cords and a lot of saturation with 500 channels, and then
Mm-hmm.
you got all this streaming stuff. But I mean, it could be something else. I mean, is that basically it, or is there something else going on that we don't know about?
Yeah, I think that it's a combination of things. So I'll dig into what your hypothesis is. Another thing that you didn't mention is just increasing competition of
Yeah,
law firms. And, 10, 15 years ago is maybe a little bit more novel for a law firm to be marketing. And now there's been proven success in this space in marketing. And I think people have caught on. And so you see more people
yeah,
investing more advertising dollars for their firms, and there are more platforms on which to advertise. So, meanwhile, the number of injuries or car accidents, just to simplify it, in a given geographic market is not going to be growing necessarily.
right.
It's a fixed addressable market, if you will, and so it's sort of more money chasing the same number of opportunities. And so I think you're just going to see simple laws of supply and demand there cause the price per case to increase. We see it generally. It's not dramatic within our clients, but we do see an increase. And there's just really objective measures too with Google. A cost per click for an motor vehicle accident search term has gone up double-digit percentage points year over year. And you see that. I mean, it fluctuates up and down, but you can
Yeah,
just see objectively it's costing more to play. But with specifically with TV in particular, yeah, I think what you're seeing is continue. I mean, it's very clear to say, non-controversial to say that broadcast and cable, which we consider linear TV, is the viewership there is declining, and that's partly a function of cord cutters and people migrating their TV watching to streaming services, but it's also a function of people consuming media elsewhere. Even when they're watching TV, they may not be paying as much attention because they've got a phone in front of them and they're flipping through Instagram or X, formerly known as Twitter, or whatever the case may be.
right.
So the attention span of the audience has fragmented considerably. So what our challenge is and what our duty is as an advertising agency for our clients is to manage the decline of linear, because to your point, it's still there, it still works, it's an extremely efficient reach vehicle if done correctly, but manage the decline there. So transition some of the investment from typical linear to other reach vehicles that are also cost efficient but more digital. So we think about like YouTube, YouTube TV, but also YouTube mobile, and then also paid social media, Facebook or Instagram, both meta properties. And so we try to fragment the spend from what was sort of the monolithic linear TV into a couple of different platforms where that audience and an extension of that audience exists in a cost efficient way. But it's a difficult challenge that even the largest advertising agency holding companies and largest advertisers like Procter and Gamble, is having the same sort of challenge on a much larger scale of how do we move away from what was this tentpole medium of TV and spread the investment across a portfolio of platforms in a really smart
Yeah.
way.
So how about this? Some people call it streaming. Some people call it CTV. Um,
Yeah.
what do you? I mean,
Yeah, I think that CTV, connected TV, or streaming, which is synonymous, and for those who may not be aware, this is platforms like Hulu, Tubi, Samsung TV. People might conflate it with like a Netflix. While streaming, Netflix is streaming. It's non-ad supported, at least for now. It's subscription, so it's not a platform that you could advertise on. But these are the types of platforms that we're talking about. The trick in terms of managing the transition from linear to CTV is that the CPMs, or sort of the cost per unit, basically in advertising lingo, is higher on CTV and streaming than it is on broadcast or cable. So it's a more expensive platform. The way you should be thinking about it is not just a replacement, like, oh, I had $10 on broadcast before, so I'm going to move $2 over to streaming and I'm going to get the same outcome. That's not the case. You have to be really targeted in how you use your streaming ad spend, where specifically in terms of zip codes and even demographics, and against which types of content you're showing your advertising to get the most bang out of the buck. And what you should really be thinking about is, I'm not reaching people who are watching broadcast and cable another time. I'm reaching people who are decidedly not on broadcast and cable, an audience that I know that I'm not speaking to. I'm reaching them strategically over here with a very sort of what I would say it would be a conservative investment in TV, but in a really targeted way. I think people make the mistake of assuming it's the same and they expect the same results, and it's not. You have to treat it differently because you're speaking to a different audience via a different, media vehicle.
so like in TV, regular broadcast, what
Mm-hmm.
would you say the average cost per thousand eyes or whatever pair of eyes? Because that's the way
Yeah.
that's one way you look at it when you're buying it, right?
Yep.
It,
Absolutely. Yeah. Broadcast is going to be like $3 to $6. We
and
try to get around $4, and then you're going to get, depending on the streaming service, but some what I would consider to be like more affordable ones are going to be in the 20s, $20 to $25 or $25 to $30 CPMs. So yeah, we're talking about multiples higher in terms of cost on a kind of per unit basis, if you
yeah,
will.
it is. Back when I was practicing, Telemundo was like that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the Hispanic stations, they were like
Mm-hmm.
crazy expensive, but
Mm-hmm.
you wanted to be on them because they had a captive audience. I mean, if you really wanted to get Hispanic clients, I mean, it's changed now, I know, but
Yeah.
is it still like that with Telemundo and those stations? Are they still a lot higher than broadcast?
They are a bit higher. We typically, I mean, it's a completely different strategy, frankly, when you're looking at a Hispanic audience, and from a lawyer's perspective too, it's a lot more of grassroots marketing than it is broad reach, because the communities are tighter, and word of mouth is something that gets fostered at like greater strength and speed. However, that said, yeah, we do focus on Telemundo, but a lot of it is going to be a little bit more Spanish content for search, social, and YouTube, and really being targeted about how we deliver that. And then with respect to streaming as a platform as well, it is more expensive. Another misconception that I'll point out, actually, while we're on the topic too, is that it's more of like a performance vehicle, where it's like, if I go on CTV, I can because I can measure it, because I can put a pixel on my website and see if somebody came there. People think that it's a direct response type of advertising, kind of like a paid search, where it's not. Just because you can measure something doesn't necessarily mean the action for the consumer is the same. It's still very much just a brand vehicle. You're using it as an ability to communicate to a broad audience that you exist, in sort of the hopes that if they run into an unfortunate event like a car accident, they have that existing brand equity in mind from having watched that TV show on, Tubi or Samsung TV. So I think it's worth pointing that out too, that even though it's digital, it's still, from a consumer's perspective, delivers the same function.
How about radio? How's that doing?
We love radio, actually. Terrestrial radio. We'll do some streaming audio in specific cases, but really terrestrial radio has proven really strong. We really like combining a smart out of home campaign with a terrestrial AM FM radio campaign. So because, people are, they may not watch broadcast TV, they may not be on social media, but the vast majority of people are driving in their cars. So they're seeing billboards, and a huge, I don't know the statistics off the top of my head, but a huge percentage of people still listen to AM, FM on their commutes. As opposed to, Spotify or Pandora. It is still very much dominant. And so you're getting an audio message on your commute to and from work, and you're getting a visual message, hopefully, from a well-placed billboard or bus ad. So those two, we like to see those, and we've done some really interesting creative, and we've started those campaigns. And you'll actually see, very rarely do you start a new media format or campaign and see an uptick in cases. One of the advantages we have is we've got clients in multiple markets, so we can test things and we can benchmark. And if it's working elsewhere, we lift and shift it and try to retrofit it to what works for a firm in a different market. And we've had a lot of success with radio campaigns in multiple markets over the past year or two. So yeah, we're big fans and think it's still a highly relevant media format.
Yeah, I like it too. And I think the reason people still listen to FM and AM is because they want to know the local what's going on with the local traffic and the local weather and the local news.
Totally.
I listen to Sirius, but still sometimes when I'm driving, I want to hear what's local going on. Especially in the morning. Probably so then in the afternoon for me personally, but I'm not the ideal client either, so it don't really matter what I do. I used to show all my ads to my lawyers, Kyle, and if they liked them, I threw them in the trash. Because I felt like if they liked them, then it was not who I'm looking for. I'm not looking for an educated professional that's got analytical thinking.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that's what we say internally, because I don't listen to AM FM radio. I listen to Spotify, and frankly, a lot of our clients and folks we just speak to at conferences or otherwise, they want to be on podcasts and they want to be on Pandora because that's what they listen to. And it's me marketing, and we're not marketing to lawyers. We're marketing to people who need law firm services, who don't know lawyers. Yeah, and that's just a very different lifestyle, demographic, and set of user behavior. So yeah, that's very smart of you to throw out that advice at your law firm.
But I mean, it's just like, now for lawyers, I think this podcast is good. But this is we're pre-recording this, but tomorrow I actually release my 200th episode. I've done one every week for almost 4 years, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, that would be.
Yeah, and it's amazing. But I really enjoy doing it. I feel like I'm learning something every time. I mean, you just taught me something. Every time I have somebody on, I try to just ask them questions like, if I was a practicing lawyer, what would I want to know, right? Because that's what the listeners want to know. I mean, what's the deal? I mean, everyone wants to know what the deal is.
Absolutely, and that's why I think the mastermind concept that you have is really smart too. We get a lot of questions. I mean, intake is a perennial issue with our clients, and as we talk to potential clients as well, it always comes up. And there's a lot of services out there for coaching and consulting, which I think can be valuable. But the reality is, a lot of these things, it's the rubber meets the road and the actual implementation and practice of it. And it's difficult. Like I said, I come from a family of lawyers. My parents aren't inherently thinking like operators, business operators. They're trained to think differently. And that's a good thing. That's what they get paid to do. So first of all, you're starting from a place of like, you didn't go to school for this. It's not necessarily inherently like part of how you think, and you're busy practicing law and doing these other things. So being able to have somebody come in and sort of advise you on what to do is great. But if you don't carve out the time, and you as the managing partner on a law firm or someone on your team really focus on doing these things, it gets challenging. It just never happens. It's a pain point that you always acknowledge is there, but never solve. And I think the mastermind it's helpful to hear, it's cathartic, I think, to hear that other people are experiencing the same frustrations of you, but more productively, you get to hear sort of the tidbits of like what's working and what's not. And if you're making bite-sized improvements here and there operationally, you'll get there eventually. It can be really, I think, overwhelming for people if they come away from an MTMP or like an NTL conference and it's like, oh my God, these people have it all figured out. I have to do these million things to get it right. It's like, no, break it down to its component parts and take it off one at a time, focus on one thing at a time, and you'll get there. You'll get there, you know?
Like it's like eating elephants, what I tell people. It's
Yeah.
one bite at a time, you know, you just got to prioritize. But that is the biggest problem is people go to these things or whatever, get pumped up, then they go home and life gets in the way or they get busy. But the ones that are successful are the ones that execute or have somebody execute for them. Because I'd rather have one great idea that I actually execute than 20 that I don't.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what it all, that's, I think that's the secret. Because I don't think I'm real smart, but I think I've always been very grit. Like I would never, I really push to get things done. And either I'll do it or I'll push somebody, and, you know, holding people accountable. Because I always tell everybody, you know, if they don't think it's important to you, it's not going to be important to them. That's just the truth.
Yeah.
Well, if somebody wants to, we're running out of time. Somebody wants to get up with you or kind of just, you know, bump some stuff off with P&P or you or some of your people there. Because I looked at your website, you got a full staff, man.
Yeah.
How can they get up with you?
We got a full team of people. Well, I'd love to any attorney who's serious about marketing or just growing their law firm. I love having those conversations. So please reach out to me. My name is very long, so it would be difficult to spell out here. But hopefully, maybe in the show notes, we could the website will be there, and then I'll also include my email address. And I'd love to have a conversation with anybody who's interested in just learning more about PMP or just talking about law firm growth in general.
Yeah. It's great meeting you at the conference. It's great talking to you today. You got a wealth. I can tell you're real smart. So I want to hang around with you. Dad told me to hang around with people smarter than I am. So that's what I'm going to try to do.
I think that's a good lesson. I try to do that too. And I'd love to, Ken. I'm glad we met each other, and I'm looking forward to many years to come. A good working relationship and friendship. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And until next time, this is Ken Hardison, dedicated to your success.